An aging war veteran named Sam Whitaker quietly maintains a forgotten bench across from a courthouse, unseen by the world he once served. But a small act of remembrance sparks a ripple, transforming his quiet ritual into a citywide movement of empathy, connection, and human dignity. As strangers become neighbors and silence becomes sanctuary, the Whitaker Bench teaches a powerful truth. Once you truly see someone, you can't unsee them. Welcome to my channel. They never asked me to stop coming. Maybe they figured I'd give up eventually. But I never did. Every morning, before the city woke up proper, I'd be there, wiping down the bench on Tremont Street across from the old county courthouse. My name's Sam Whitaker, 72 years old, Army vet, and more or less invisible to the people I swore to protect. And that bench? It's not just a slab of stone. It's the last place I can still feel useful. I live in a creaky one-room flat above Grady's grocery, where the scent of pickles and cinnamon bread leaks through the floorboards. My room's barely more than a cot, a shelf of Western novels, and a tiny table where I eat whatever I scrounge up. In the windowsill sits a tin of butter cookies I haven't touched in weeks. Just keep it there for the memory. It's the brand my mom used to buy when she had extra change. Every morning at 6:30, like clockwork, I'd head down the rickety stairs with my folding stool and that same cloth I've used for the last 10 years. 3 blocks later, I'd set up beside the bench. The air off the river always stung a little, even in early November. I'd sweep away leaves, adjust the miniature flag in the planter, and make the place right. It was my own private ritual, a way of whispering to the world, some things still matter. Folks passed by, young parents rushing their kids to school, commuters buried in their phones, teenagers with music in their ears, and the whole world at their feet. None of them saw me. Not really. Maybe I looked like a relic. Or worse, someone to avoid. Except for Mrs. Carlson, who lived across the street and waved every morning with her good hand, the one arthritis hadn't taken. "Morning, Sam," she'd call. "You keeping that bench clean for us?" I always smiled and nodded. Never said much back. I didn't have the energy for chit-chat, but I appreciated being seen. In my back pocket, I kept a photograph. Black and white, edges curled and soft from years of being handled. 8 men, all young and sunburned, squinting at the camera beneath a flag we hoisted in the middle of nowhere. That was 1969, Vietnam. I was 21. That picture's all I got left of them now. Most days, I'd sit on that bench after wiping it down, my hands folded over my knees, and just watch the city breathe. No one knew my name. No one asked. That was fine. Until the banner went up. Big red letters, Veteran Appreciation Day Ceremony, November 11th. Right above the steps of the courthouse. Folded chairs lined up in rows. Flags strung like bunting across the railings. I stood at the edge of the sidewalk and watched them set up, my hands deep in my jacket pockets. I could feel the badge in there, heavy with memory. I hadn't taken it out in a long time. But something felt different about that day. I walked up to the main entrance where a young man in a navy blazer was checking names off a clipboard. "Excuse me," I said. My voice came out smaller than I intended. "I'd like to attend the ceremony." He barely looked up. "Invitation only, sir." "I'm a veteran," I said. I pulled out the badge. It caught the light. The eagle was still proud, even if the silver had dulled. The kid squinted at it, then back at me. "Sir, we're not serving free meals today. The shelter's 2 blocks down on Kingston." My stomach turned, but I didn't let it show. "I'm not here for food." "Please step aside," he said, already moving on to greet a couple walking up in tailored coats. I stood there for a second, fingers clenched around that badge, and then drifted over to the side window. Pressed my palm to the glass. Inside, they were laughing, shaking hands, metals polished to mirror shine. I knew those kinds of stories. I'd lived them. And there I was on the outside again. I don't know how long I stood there, forehead resting on the cold glass, trying to pretend I didn't care. But truth is, I did. I cared more than I wanted to admit. Inside, the color guard stood at attention, flags raised, uniforms pressed to perfection. I could hear the start of the anthem, muffled by the thick courthouse windows, but clear enough to stir something in me. Something old and buried. A boy pressed his nose to the other side of the glass, wide-eyed. "Mom, who's that?" he asked, pointing right at me. His mom grabbed his arm, pulled him away. "Don't stare," she said, all tense. "He's probably just not well. Let's go inside." She didn't even look me in the eye. I caught my reflection in the glass, coat fraying at the collar, cap washed out from green to gray, cheeks sunken, beard scruffy. That used to be a soldier in the mirror. Now, just another ghost walking the sidewalks. I took out the photograph again. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself I hadn't imagined it all, that I had once mattered. The tear in the corner had spread a little, slicing right through Martinez's face. Private Miguel Martinez from El Paso, 18 when he enlisted, died in my arms 3 days after that photo was taken. I promised him I'd get his story home. And I did. I wrote his mother myself. She sent me a bracelet with his name on it. I still wear it. As I looked down, a sharp dress shoe landed squarely on the photo. "Watch where you're going," came a voice from above me. Tall guy in a tailored suit, phone glued to his hand. Probably some councilman, rushing inside to shake hands and pose for photos. He didn't even notice what he'd stepped on. I bent down slowly, knees cracking like old branches. Picked the picture up as carefully as I could. The tear was worse now. Cut right through Martinez's smile. Felt like a knife in my gut. I pressed it flat against my chest, holding it there like a shield. Inside, the general stepped up to the podium. His voice boomed through the speakers mounted outside. "We gathered today not just to honor veterans," he said, "but to remember what they gave up, so we didn't have to." I wanted to laugh. Not out of humor, but from that sharp, bitter edge of irony. Because I gave up plenty. And no one remembered. A security guard came up behind me, tapped me on the shoulder. "Can't loiter here, pal. Move along. Move along." Like I was just taking up space. I nodded, slipped the photo back into my pocket. Didn't say a word. Just picked up my cloth, had dropped it without noticing, and started walking. The anthem echoed behind me. "As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free." I'd done that. I'd helped make men free. 48 of them. I counted. Every one of their names still lives in my mind, like a roll call I do when I can't sleep. But to the rest of the world, I was just another man too stubborn to disappear completely. That night, I sat by the window longer than usual. Didn't read. Just watched the lights blur outside my glass. I was too proud to cry, but I couldn't stop the sting in my eyes. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe someone would see me. The morning after the ceremony, I woke to a strange stillness. The kind that hangs in the air when something is about to shift, but hasn't quite yet. Same routine as always. Down the stairs. Folding chair under my arm. Cloth in my back pocket. The bench was waiting. Only this time, something had changed. There were flowers. A little bouquet, resting right on the bench. Red, white, and blue ribbon tying it together like someone had actually thought it through. Tucked inside the stems was a folded piece of paper. "To the man who remembers when no one else does." That's all it said. No name. Just those words. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just sat. My hands rested on the bench beside the flowers, not touching them. Afraid that if I did, they might vanish. Around 8 o'clock, Mrs. Carlson shuffled out from her front stoop with her walker and waved. But this time, she crossed the street. "Sam," she said, breathless from the effort. "That was you they were talking about, wasn't it?" I saw it. The salute. I must have looked confused, because she reached into her cardigan and pulled out a page from the town paper, all folded and creased. Front page, a photo. General Richard Caro, full dress uniform, standing outside the courthouse mid-salute. And across from him, just barely visible in the shot, was me. Head down, holding the badge in my lap like it was a piece of history. The caption read, "Salute to a forgotten hero." "You made the paper," she said, eyes gleaming. About time someone paid attention. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. By lunchtime, the bench was no longer just mine. First came the little girl, probably 6 or 7, holding her mom's hand. She tiptoed up to me and handed me a drawing. Crayons on notebook paper. A stick figure soldier beside a flag. "Thank you for keeping the bench clean," she said, then ran off. After that came the young man in army fatigues, maybe 25 at most. "Colonel Whitaker?" he asked, standing straight as a rail. "Permission to sit with you, sir?" I blinked. "Son, you don't need permission to sit on public property." He smiled like I'd just passed some kind of test and sat down beside me. Turns out he was stationed at the base just outside town. Said he recognized the name from a story his grandfather used to tell. His grandfather was Sergeant Dean McCleary. Served with me in Da Nang. That hit me square in the chest. "Your granddad," I said. He used to carry a harmonica in his vest. Played Amazing Grace in the middle of mortar fire. The young soldier grinned. "He said the same thing about you, that you always knew where the danger was before it got there." We talked for a long while. And when he finally stood to go, he saluted me. A real, proper salute. The kind that means something. That afternoon, I didn't clean the bench. I just sat there and let people come. 3 days after the article ran, just as I was straightening the little flag by the flower bed, I heard the unmistakable sound of polished boots on concrete. Not the rushed shuffle of a commuter. Not the lazy scuff of teenagers. Military. Precise. Intentional. I turned. Standing at the end of the sidewalk, dressed not in uniform but still unmistakable, was General Caro, the man from the photograph. He wasn't flanked by an entourage. No camera crew. Just him. Tall. Broad-shouldered. The kind of man who could command a battlefield or a dinner party with the same voice. He walked toward me slowly, respectfully, like this was holy ground. "Colonel Samuel Whitaker," he said, stopping a few feet away. I straightened out of habit, reflexes kicking in from a life I hadn't lived in decades. "Yes, sir. I've been trying to find you for years." My mouth went dry. Didn't know I was lost. He chuckled. "You weren't. We were." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a soft cloth. I knew that shape before he even unwrapped it. A medal. My medal. The silver star I'd been told was lost in the shuffle after I was medevaced out. I'd never cared much about the hardware. But seeing it there, gleaming in the morning light, caught me off guard. "This belongs to you," the general said. I didn't take it right away. "Why now?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Because a man named Jacob Riley died last month. He was the last of your unit we still had contact with. In his final days, all he wanted was to make sure your story was told. He sent us letters. Photos. That's how we found the name, how we found you." "Jake," I murmured. "He always said I'd outlive them all." "He was right," Caro said quietly. I finally took the medal. It was heavier than I remembered, or maybe my hands were just older. The general motioned to the bench. "May I?" We sat in silence for a while. No fanfare. Just the two of us, shoulder to shoulder like we were back on the tarmac, waiting for a ride home. Then he said, "This bench, it's more than just a place to sit. It's sacred now. We're making it official." "What do you mean?" "We're dedicating it. With your name. The town approved it yesterday. The Whitaker Bench, for those who serve, and those who remember." I looked down at the ground, blinking hard. "You don't have to say anything," he added. "We just wanted you to know. You were never forgotten. Just unseen. And that's changing now." When he left, he shook my hand like I was a brother in arms. And as he walked away, people on the street stepped aside for him. But a few looked back at me too. Not with pity. With something else. Recognition. The plaque went up quietly the next week. Brass, about the size of a book, mounted into the stone base of the bench. The Whitaker Bench, for those who serve, and those who remember. They didn't make a big fuss. No parade, no marching band. Just a simple unveiling with a few town officials, a handful of veterans, and Mrs. Carlson with a Tupperware of lemon bars that could melt the frost off a January windshield. I sat on the far end while they spoke, hands folded in my lap, badge in my pocket, the medal tucked safe back in its case. Then something strange happened. People stayed. After the mayor gave her short speech and the camera guy packed up, folks didn't leave. They lingered. A young woman I didn't recognize sat down beside me. "Is it true you were into Nong?" she asked softly. I nodded. "My grandfather was too. He died when I was little. Never talked much about it. But I think he would have liked this place." She left a photograph beside the plaque. Him in uniform, arm around a buddy, grinning in black and white. His name was Tom Dillard. By lunchtime, 2 more people had taken a seat. One was a teenager from the high school up the road, earbuds dangling around his neck. The other was a woman in scrubs, her name tag reading Clara, RN. They didn't talk to each other at first. Just sat. But then the boy asked if the nurse was from the hospital on Summit. She was. Turns out, his grandma was in recovery there. They started talking like neighbors do, easy, slow, kind. The bench did that. It pulled the quiet out of people. By the 3rd day, folks were leaving things behind. A little boy left a toy soldier. Someone else left a handwritten poem tucked under the edge of the bench. There were drawings, thank you notes, even a thermos of hot coffee with a sticky note. For whoever needs it today. I kept cleaning it, of course. That was my job. That would always be my job. But it wasn't just dust and leaves anymore. It was love. It was memory. It was presence. One morning, I found a folded letter wedged beneath the plaque. "Dear Colonel Whitaker, my name is Jonah. I'm 13. I come here sometimes because school's hard, and home's even harder. But when I sit here, I feel better. Like someone's watching out for me. Thank you for cleaning the bench. Thank you for making a place for people like me." I sat still for a long time after reading that one. Longer than I had in months. Because Jonah? He wasn't the only one. Jonah came in person 2 days later. I knew it was him the second he walked up. Same careful handwriting in the note. Same nervous energy. He hovered near the edge of the bench, backpack slung low, eyes flicking toward me then away like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to speak. "You can sit," I said. He blinked at me. "You know who I am?" "I read your letter." He sat, quiet at first. Then he asked, "Were you really in a war?" I nodded. "Vietnam." He looked down at his sneakers. "My dad yells a lot," he said. "Not like in movies. Just mean stuff. Says I should toughen up." I didn't know how to respond to that. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a teacher. But I know what it's like to get yelled at by someone who's supposed to protect you. "You're tougher than you think," I said finally. He didn't answer, but he stayed. Came back the next day too. And the next. Sometimes he brought his homework. Sometimes he just sat and stared at the sky. And sometimes he cried when he thought I wasn't looking. One morning, he showed up with a cup of coffee. It was cold, way too much sugar, and served in a cracked mug with a cartoon dinosaur on it. "Found it in the teacher's lounge," he said, trying to act casual. "Figured you might need it." It was awful coffee. It was perfect. That day, another kid joined us. A girl named Raina. Sharp, quiet, eyes that had seen more than any child should. She didn't speak the first few times she came. Just sat beside Jonah, knees pulled up to her chest. But one day she left a small sketch on the bench. Me, Jonah, and her, all sitting beneath a tree that wasn't really there, but somehow felt right. And like that, it began. What started as one kid seeking silence became a gathering spot for all kinds of stories. A widower who'd lost his wife after 50 years sat with us and told jokes no one else found funny, but made Jonah laugh so hard he snorted milk through his nose. A woman who used to be a medic in Desert Storm brought first aid kits for kids in the neighborhood. A man with a cane and a 1,000-yard stare said nothing for 2 weeks before quietly whispering, "I lost my boy in Afghanistan." No one replied, but we all understood. That bench became something else entirely. A place where the world slowed down enough to see each other. A place where pain didn't need fixing, just witnessing. It was the city councilwoman who came up with the idea, but it was Jonah's voice that convinced them. He stood up, all 5 feet of him, in front of a microphone too tall for his frame, during a public meeting that would normally be half empty. But not this time. This time, the hall was packed, residents, veterans, teachers, even reporters. He cleared his throat, glanced at me once, and then spoke. "My name is Jonah Taylor. I'm 13. I used to feel invisible. But then I started sitting on the Whitaker bench, and now, people see me." That was all he said. That was all he had to say. The council voted unanimously. They called it the Whitaker Initiative. It wasn't just a plaque or a nod on Veterans Day. It was a movement. Volunteers started signing up, folks who'd lived in this town their whole lives, but never knew the stories walking right past them. Teachers, retirees, high school seniors doing their community hours. Each one took a shift, sitting on the bench, listening, watching, just being present. We set up a simple code, no judgment, no fixing, no preaching, just being there. Raina became the artist in residence, if you can believe that. She designed a series of storyboards posted near the bench, panels with drawings of people she'd met. No names, just moments. A veteran with a trembling hand. A teenage girl with a poetry notebook. An elderly couple who brought tea every Thursday. The bench became more than a symbol. It became a stage, a sanctuary. And slowly, the idea spread. Other benches around the city were designated with small brass plates, a listening place. Part of the Whitaker Initiative. People sat. People talked. People listened. Jonah ran a little blog that cataloged the stories. Nothing flashy. Just photos, short quotes, sketches. The header read, "Every person matters. Every story deserves to be heard." I never imagined a bench could change a city. But I guess that's how change happens, one seat at a time. The bench had been busy for months when I noticed a familiar face walking toward me one foggy morning. It took me a second to place him, clean-shaven now, short hair, dress shirt rolled to the elbows. But those eyes, I knew. Danny Morrison, the same young man who, not long ago, had told me the soup kitchen was 2 blocks down. He approached slowly, like someone walking into church for the first time after years away. "Colonel Whitaker," he said quietly, stopping just short of the bench. "Sir, I was wrong." I looked at him a moment. "You were doing your job, son." He shook his head. "No. I was doing what I thought was the job, not what it should have been. Then he sat down, not beside me, across from me, on the opposite bench. Like we were equals now. Like he didn't want to crowd me, just be near. I've been volunteering here, he said. Couple evenings a week. Just listening. I nodded. It's changed me, he added. Not just the stories. The silence, too. The way people sit here like they're laying something down. I knew what he meant. That bench wasn't just a place to speak. It was a place to set down burdens. He hesitated, then reached into his bag. This came to the Veterans Hall a few days ago. Addressed to you. He handed me a small box. Inside was a metal, clean, polished, with a new ribbon. A purple heart. There was also a letter. Handwritten in looping, careful script. Dear Colonel Whitaker. My grandfather was Private Eli Thompson. You carried him through enemy fire. He lived another 41 years because of you. Before he passed, he asked me to find you and return this. He said you left it in the mud when they airlifted you out. He kept it safe. And now, it's home. Thank you for giving me a grandfather. Maggie Thompson. I stared at the box for a long time. My old hands weren't steady like they used to be, but I held that metal like it was the last candle in the dark. Danny didn't speak. He just let me be. And when he finally stood to leave, he offered me something I hadn't expected. Not a salute. Not a handshake. A hug. And I took it. I didn't tell anyone when the chest pain started, not right away. What would have been the point? You get to a certain age, and everything feels like rust in the joints, smoke in the lungs. Pain just becomes part of the rhythm. But this was different. Deeper. Heavier. Still, I kept going to the bench. Still wiped it down every morning, even when my hands shook. People offered to help. They meant well, but I had to do it myself. Some things aren't about effort. They're about meaning. One night, I wrote a letter. Left it on the small table in my apartment, under my reading lamp. Just a few pages. Neat script. Folded it into an envelope and propped it up with a paperweight from Grady's grocery. The letter said, The bench doesn't belong to me. It never did. It belongs to all of you now. Keep cleaning it. Keep sitting. Keep listening. Most of all, keep seeing. Because once you learn to truly see someone, you never unsee them. Sam Whitaker. They found me the next morning in my chair by the window, blanket pulled up to my waist, the city lights soft and golden through the glass. It was peaceful. That's all I ever wanted, really. They held a small service. Simple, just how I asked. No trumpets, no honor guard. Just people. Ordinary people. The line of mourners stretched around the block, veterans, students, strangers. Folks who had only met me once. Or never at all. Mrs. Carlson placed my old cap on the bench. Danny brought a bouquet of wildflowers and read my letter aloud. Jonah sat with Raina, holding her hand the whole time. And when the sun finally dipped low and the street lamps buzzed to life, no one left right away. They just sat there. Together. They call it the Whitaker way now. It started with just the bench, but it didn't stop there. Within a year, benches across the state had little plaques. A listening place. A Whitaker bench. In parks, outside libraries, near bus stops. Some with flowers. Some with journals tucked underneath in weatherproof cases, where people could leave stories behind or pick one up when they needed hope. At the original bench, Jonah, now 15, taller, steadier, still comes every Sunday. He keeps a small notebook and writes down things people say. Nothing personal. Just feelings. Like, today I feel brave, or I forgot how to laugh until 5 minutes ago. Raina drew a mural on the side of Grady's grocery. It shows a bench that stretches toward the horizon, and on it sit people from all walks of life. Soldiers, kids, old folks, a woman in scrubs, a man with a cane. At the far end sits a figure with a worn cap and a gentle smile, looking out across the city. Above it, in her perfect block letters, it reads, Once you learn to see invisible people, you can never unsee them. That became our motto. Not just in town, but in hearts. Teachers started Whitaker circles, small moments in the school day where students could talk without being graded or judged. Businesses added a Whitaker seat in break rooms where anyone could sit if they needed someone to listen. I heard a story about a teenager in Kansas who sat on a Whitaker bench for an hour every Friday, just waiting for someone who looked like they needed to talk. Another about a woman in Florida who started bringing extra coffee every morning. 1 cup for her, 1 for whoever sat beside her. They didn't know me, but they carried the spirit of what we built. Danny now runs the local Veteran Resource Center. He tells new recruits about me, not like I was a legend, but like I was proof that small things matter. That sometimes the biggest change starts with wiping down a bench and saying hello. And the kids? They keep coming. Sometimes they sit alone, and that's okay. Sometimes they talk to each other. Sometimes, when the sun hits just right, they look up and swear they can see a man in a worn army coat, straightening a flag, nodding from the other side of the street. I hope they're right, because I'm still there. In every story told, in every silence honored, in every moment someone decides to see instead of ignore, the bench still gets cleaned every morning. Someone always comes, because once you learn to see the invisible, you never unsee them again.